Welcome, dear listeners, to History with Herodotus, where we delve into the depths of the past to uncover the secrets that have shaped our world. Today, we embark on a journey to explore one of the most pivotal battles in European history. The Battle of Waterloo. This epic clash of armies, which took place on June 18, 1815, was a turning point in the Napoleonic Wars, marking the downfall of the French Empire and the rise of British supremacy. As we set out to examine the origins of this momentous event, let us transport ourselves to the early 19th century, a time of great upheaval and transformation. The Congress of Vienna, which convened in September 1814, had attempted to reorganize Europe after the tumultuous years of Napoleon's conquests. However, the fragile peace was short-lived, as Napoleon escaped from his exile on the island of Elba on February 26, 1815, and returned to power in France. The news of Napoleon's return sent shockwaves throughout Europe, and the coalition of European powers that had defeated him once before began to mobilize their forces. The British, led by the Duke of Wellington, were stationed in the Netherlands, while the Prussians, under the command of Field Marshal Gebhard von Blücher, were gathering their forces in the vicinity of Namur. The French army, meanwhile, was rapidly regrouping and reorganizing under Napoleon's leadership. He had at his disposal a formidable force of approximately 72,000 soldiers, including some of the most experienced and battle-hardened troops in Europe. The French army was stationed near the city of Charleroi, where they were poised to strike at the coalition forces. The events leading up to the Battle of Waterloo began to unfold on June 15, 1815, when Napoleon's forces crossed the border into the Netherlands and launched a surprise attack on the Prussian outpost at Thuin. This bold move was intended to drive a wedge between the British and Prussian armies and to gain a strategic advantage over his enemies. The following day, June 16, 1815, saw the Battle of Quatre Bras, where the French forces clashed with the coalition army under the command of Wellington. Although the battle was tactically indecisive, it set the stage for the larger confrontation that would take place 2 days later at Waterloo. As we delve deeper into the origins of the Battle of Waterloo, we are reminded of the complex interplay of historical events, personal relationships, and strategic decisions that shaped the course of this pivotal conflict. The bravery, cunning, and luck of individual leaders, such as Napoleon, Wellington, and Blücher, would ultimately determine the fate of Europe. The stage was now set for the epic confrontation between the French army and the coalition forces. The armies were gathering, the plans were being laid, and the fate of Europe hung in the balance. And so, dear listeners, we have reached the threshold of our exploration, having glimpsed the precursors and origins of this pivotal battle. In our next segment, we shall immerse ourselves in the heart of the conflict, where the drama, heroism, and tragedy of that fateful day will come alive in vivid detail. Join me as we venture into the midst of the Battle of Waterloo, where the course of history was forever altered. Welcome back to History with Herodotus. We're exploring one of the most pivotal battles in European history, the Battle of Waterloo. As we left off in our previous segment, the stage was set for the epic confrontation between the French army and the coalition forces on June 18, 1815. As the sun rose over the rolling hills and fields near the town of Waterloo, the two armies faced each other, their formations stretching across the landscape like giant chess pieces. The French army, led by Napoleon, was arrayed in a series of divisions, with the Imperial Guard holding the center. The coalition forces, under the command of the Duke of Wellington, were deployed on the reverse slope of a ridge where they could take advantage of the high ground and protective cover. The battle began at around 11:30 a.m., as the French artillery opened fire on the coalition positions. The cannonade was intense, with shells screaming through the air and exploding among the troops. The British infantry, formed into dense squares, stood firm against the barrage, while the cavalry units waited patiently for their moment to charge. Meanwhile, on the Prussian front, Field Marshal Gebhard von Blücher's forces were making steady progress, pushing back the French right flank and threatening to encircle Napoleon's army. The French emperor, aware of the danger, dispatched his elite troops, the Old Guard, to hold off the Prussians and buy time for his center to break through the coalition lines. As the battle raged on, the fighting became increasingly fierce and chaotic. The French cavalry, led by Marshal Michel Ney, launched a series of daring charges against the British squares, but were repeatedly repelled with heavy losses. The British infantry, meanwhile, held their ground, firing volley after volley into the French ranks, and slowly but surely pushing them back. One of the most pivotal moments of the battle came when the Scots Greys, a regiment of British heavy cavalry, charged into the fray, sabers drawn. They smashed into the French lines, cutting a swath through the enemy troops and sending them fleeing in panic. The charge was led by Colonel Inglis Hamilton, who would later be awarded the Victoria Cross for his bravery. As the day wore on, the French army began to falter, its units becoming increasingly disorganized and demoralized. Napoleon's generals, including Marshal Louis-Nicolas Davout and Marshal Emmanuel de Grouchy, fought valiantly, but they were unable to stem the tide of defeat. By around 7 p.m., the battle was all but over. The French army was in full retreat, with the coalition forces in hot pursuit. Napoleon himself had fled the field, leaving behind his famous hat and coat as a symbol of his defeat. The casualties on both sides were staggering, with estimates suggesting that over 47,000 men were killed or wounded during the battle. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in history, we are reminded of the words of the Duke of Wellington, who said, "It's been a damn nice thing, the nearest run thing you ever saw." Indeed, the Battle of Waterloo was a narrow and hard-won victory, one that would shape the course of European history for centuries to come. And so, dear listeners, we have reached the climax of our exploration, having witnessed the drama, heroism, and tragedy of the Battle of Waterloo. In our final segment, we'll examine the aftermath of the battle, including the exile of Napoleon and the reorganization of Europe at the Congress of Vienna. Join me as we explore the lasting legacy of this pivotal conflict and discover how it continues to shape our world today. Welcome back to History with Herodotus, where we're concluding our exploration of one of the most pivotal battles in European history, the Battle of Waterloo. As we left off in our previous segment, the French army was in full retreat, with the coalition forces in hot pursuit. Napoleon himself had fled the field, leaving behind his famous hat and coat as a symbol of his defeat. In the aftermath of the battle, Napoleon was forced to abdicate for the second time, marking the end of his reign and the fall of the French Empire. He was exiled to the island of St. Helena, where he would remain until his death in 1821. The Bourbon monarchy was restored, with Louis XVIII returning to the throne. The Congress of Vienna, which convened in September 1815, aimed to reorganize Europe and establish a new balance of power. The Congress was attended by representatives from major European powers, including Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia. The resulting Treaty of Paris imposed harsh penalties on France, including significant territorial losses and a large indemnity. The Congress of Vienna also led to the redrawing of the European map, with several countries gaining or losing territory. The German Confederation was established, replacing the Holy Roman Empire, while the Kingdom of Poland was reconstituted under Russian control. The Congress also marked the beginning of the Concert of Europe, a system of diplomacy and collective security that aimed to maintain peace and stability on the continent. One of the most significant consequences of the Battle of Waterloo was the rise of Britain as a dominant world power. The British Empire would go on to expand its territories and influence across the globe, shaping international relations for centuries to come. The battle also marked the beginning of a period of relative peace in Europe, known as the Pax Britannica, which lasted until the outbreak of World War I. As we reflect on the legacy of the Battle of Waterloo, it's clear that this pivotal conflict had far-reaching consequences for European history. It marked the end of an era of French dominance and the beginning of a new era of British supremacy. The battle also led to significant changes in the balance of power, with the rise of new nations and the redrawing of the European map. In conclusion, dear listeners, our exploration of the Battle of Waterloo has taken us on a journey through one of the most pivotal moments in European history. From the origins of the conflict to the drama and heroism of the battle itself, we've examined the complex web of events that led to Napoleon's defeat and the reorganization of Europe. As we close this chapter, we're reminded that the legacy of Waterloo continues to shape our world today, a testament to the enduring power of history to inform and inspire us. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history with Herodotus. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.